Okay, so, well, I'm here to talk about physics and what is the job of a physicist. And the title is basically the question that I hear once a year, every single Christmas when I go home and my relatives are going to ask me exactly again what I'm doing as a job. So being a physicist, or in general being a scientist, especially a research scientist, is always something that is a bit challenging to explain to the people who are not at all friendly with the topic. However, I mean, since you guys all study physics in high school, I believe that you have enough grasp of the topic to understand what this is about. You can ask me any question, and at some point I am going to ask you guys those questions that I gave you on the paper, just to gauge, like, what do you think about physics in general? So, my name is Camilla. I'm from Italy. I moved to Finland 5 years ago. I am 33 years old. I'm a girl, and I recently got my doctorate in science, and I am a professional physicist. And my topic of research is the development of nanomaterials that can be used for generating renewable energy, specifically from sunlight. And today I am going to divide this seminar in two parts. One is about the profession. How do you become a physicist, in case anybody is interested, and what are the qualities that you develop during the job. I'm not going to discuss qualities that you need for doing the job, because any job can be learned. I'm also going to discuss a little bit what it's like being a foreigner in the profession, being a female, a girl, because well, maybe now not as much as when I graduated, but we were like only 10% of physicists was made of women. And the second part of the lecture, which is only for the students who are coming to the laboratory in Micronova in the next lecture, it's about second harmonic generator, which is an optical phenomenon that you can use to change the color of a laser and do many other things, but mostly change the color. So what is my research about, in brief? So basically, I study the way that sunlight interacts with materials, specifically semiconductor materials. How many of you have studied a semiconductor so far in your science classes? Okay, nice. So then you are probably well aware of what happens in semiconductors. Semiconductors have a band gap. If I excite the electrons from the valence band of the semiconductor into the conduction band, then I have electrical charges that are free to move, because I move an electron into an empty band where they are free to move, and I leave a hole without constraints into the lower band, the valence band. And this is pretty much how a solar panel works. You can use these charges to generate electrical energy. Let me turn on the laser. As you can see here, and this is what I do, you can try to get those charges to get into water. What happens when these charges get into water? They can trigger a chemical reaction, which is water splitting. Basically, they divide water into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you can use them both for other goals. You can use the oxygen for breathing, you can use the hydrogen as fuel, or you can use them to trigger other chemical reactions. For example, the reduction of carbon dioxide into carbon monoxide, which is one way that is used to convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into other chemicals that can have some kind of use, and thus decrease the presence of greenhouse gases. All of these applications are possible by using photons, so by using sunlight. And what I do, I try to develop nanomaterials that do this. Why? Because when you go into the nanoscale, you can have different phenomena. So, for example, I try to make these tiny particles that you can see all over this picture. Those are nanoparticles. They can act as a catalyst, meaning that they will increase the rate of this sort of reactions. And one way that they do that is that they help the charges to stay divided. Because as you can see here, I have an electron up in here. It can very well decay down and emit light. and I don't want more light. I don't want the light to return. I'd like the charges to stay charges. So I try to develop nanoparticles that do this. And the peculiarity of my research is that I try to use, to fabricate this particle, techniques that also exploit sunlight for their own reaction. So I am trying to fabricate materials for renewable energy using already only renewable energy, because one of the goals of having this kind of environmentally friendly solutions is that you actually do preserve the environment. But unfortunately, when you do research, you end up wasting a lot of resources because you make prototypes, they fail, you need high energy instruments, so you have a lot of consumption. So this is basically what I do. And to do this, you don't need to be a physicist. You can be an engineer, you can be a chemist, you can be a material scientist, because so many processes are involved in this that whatever you have studied, you will always have something extra to learn. So it's not exactly required that you are a physicist. However, what do you think that a physicist really is? I ask you because when I was in high school, your age, I was really enthusiastic about physics. I wanted to become one. Then I went to my very first day of university. I saw a blackboard, and then I went home and started crying. So it's really an unpredictable thing. So let's look at the questions that I gave you. So what is physics for you, in your opinion?
I sent this book to my group in Vilma. You can also use the Google form.
Yes.
But please, you want to speak about it?
Yeah, but I'd like to hear like what students think. Who's the one who's never shy in this classroom?
Leo.
What is physics?
Well, I like the fact that I think it's more intuitive than other sciences. I mean, it's just more fun for some reason. It's something, it explains things.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can use, or you can explain things that you see in the real world based on theory that you've learned already in high school, which is something I really enjoy. Every time I see something, I can explain it to physics. I'm like, yes, I knew that. I can explain what that is. So I think that's...
What is the key difference between physics and the other sciences? Because what you said can be applied also to chemistry or biology.
I was just thinking like, yes, that also has to do with chemistry, but like, I don't know, this one is, with physics is more fun.
You raised your hand also?
Well, I personally think that physics is one way to explain the world around us, and to the last quark and atom, to the biggest black holes that there is, but also it's a way, if we understand physics in a fundamental level, we can buy ourselves time in this sort of Earth and for ourselves in a ways of renewable energy, efficient energy, and if you throw enough energy at almost every problem, it kind of goes away if you get enough of it.
Yeah, so personally, for me, physics is like more logical than chemistry or biology, but still like more applicable than math. And it has like a sweet spot for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's for me before I became a physicist, for me physics was something that was able to explain a lot of paradoxical things in nature. I grew fascinated with all these quantum realm things where things do not absolutely seem intuitive. And I thought, okay, if I study physics, then I will be able to understand these things. The main ingredient of physics is math, a ton of math. If you go and study physics at the university, you will spend 2 years studying only math, and you do this with the hope in your heart that you'll get to see physics at some point. But it's really a key ingredient. And how many of you want to become a physicist? One, sort of. People are undecided. Those who are undecided, why?
I always want to keep my opportunities open. I don't want to center myself and my options into one specific path. Physics is definitely one of the most interesting future possibilities I might have. Especially for me personally, astrophysics is something that I'm really interested in. So I don't want to limit myself into just that. That's why I'm a bit undecided. So just a bit physics, a bit engineering, and some other fields. That's why I'm undecided. But yeah.
Well, one good thing that I noted, especially in Finland, is that it's pretty easy to switch fields. I studied physics, but then I got my doctorate in engineering, and half of my job is chemistry. So in the end, you think you are headed down like a very determined path, but you will soon find, even in the choice of exams, that you can have a lot of variety in what you study. And also, I mean, people are totally allowed to change their mind. So you can start studying something and then you change your mind about that. And does anybody know a physicist, like parents, relatives, old friends? One?
Well, my brother is doing his doctorate in all.
And another one?
Yeah, a friend of mine is also studying.
And based on what they say, what do you think they do all day long at work?
I think he mostly does programming nowadays. I don't know.
At least from what I've heard, staring at a black hole a lot on a computer screen, studying theory of it, and doing a lot of math. A lot of math.
Okay, so we have two theoretical people, I suppose. None of you mentioned a laboratory. Well, I'm an experimentalist, so what I do most of the time is that I fix broken things. Yes, I have learned to be a plumber, an electrician, and a woodworker all at once, just in order to get things running. There are several types of physicists, and I put some here. So we have theoretical physics. That one involves a lot of math, and sometimes is centered around very fundamental physics, fundamental interactions, but you can really have the theory of pretty much anything. Especially now with powerful computers, you can model pretty much anything. So a theoretical physicist can range from like simulating the financial crisis of the world to just model the exact way that a drop of water is falling into a pond. And they will have wildly different mathematics. You can have two theoretical physicists talking to each other and not understanding a word of each other's work. Kind of like me when I listen to Finnish. Then you can have experimental workers, and experimental scientists are the ones who try to do the practical stuff. And our problem is that we don't read enough theory, because we try to read the theory, then we get bored and we want to like put our hands into something, and then we will go and try to make it work. Sometimes it works immediately, sometimes it doesn't. Typically, we will go back to study to realize how to fix it. Then we have particle physics. So I suppose everybody knows about CERN, Large Hadron Colliders, and like all the accelerators that shoot particles at each other. And particle physicists can be very expert in fundamental interactions between all these particles, or they can be experts at what radiation does to materials or to the body. Basically, sometimes it's just called a high energy physics, because everything that they treat will have a very high energy, particles or photons or any. And then you have, of course, astrophysics. The image that I put under the astrophysicist, does anybody of you recognize what that is? Always the same people raise their hands, but yeah. What is that?
The movie Interstellar.
Yes. Why did I put something from a movie in there? Yes.
Well, I heard that in order to create that scene, it took a lot of research and physics to actually make that image.
Exactly.
And they actually did a lot of like new research that hasn't been done before in order to make that scene.
That's right. The production of the movie called Kip Thorne, who is an astrophysicist, a real one, and they got his team to perform a lot of simulations. So their simulation produced a movie and a lot of scientific paper with very strong impact. And maybe if some of you saw some time ago, there was this famous picture that was the actual observation of a black hole with this girl. I don't remember her name, but she was the one who managed the entire modeling. And there is this picture of her with something like 60 hard drives. And it looks, well, very similar to that one. So an actual picture from data is very close to the model that was made by a team of highly qualified astrophysicists for a movie. And then you have a biomedical physicist. The picture in that is a positron tomographer. So basically a very widely used medical technique called the PET, P-E-T, that is used for imaging. And it uses positrons, which are antiparticles. So it's something that was made possible by particle research. In fact, by particle research that was done in the 30s. So the positron was discovered in the 30s, and then around the 90s, it became an actual machine in most hospitals. So that can be also the time that a discovery needs to actually become applied. And then, quite a fun one that I'm very fond of, probably because I'm from Italy, is a cultural heritage physicist, which is a physicist who specializes in non-destructive and non-invasive experimental techniques to characterize work of arts, really precious work of arts. So they are the people who do X-rays and infrared to the Mona Lisa to find out all the mistakes that Leonardo made before finishing up the painting and this kind of work. And I am an experimental condensed matter physicist, which means that I try to find out what's inside solid stuff. And I work with semiconductors because they are quite exciting in this sense, because they offer a lot of possibilities. They are solid materials in which the electrons are free to move, and that's why they are so used in so many things. So, what do I do when I'm at work? So what does a random physicist do at work? So I study a lot. I should study more, and I don't, because the day only has 24 hours and I'd like to have a life. But studying is how you get ideas. So I study and I get ideas. People have this idea of creativity, of the physicist like a genius who is staring into the sunset and conjuring out of nowhere a wonderful new theory. No. You get ideas from studying, the same way as an artist draws inspiration from what they see, but also from the work of other artists. And if you decided to study physics, then you will find that this becomes more and more true the more you advance. You study things, you see the work of others, and you get ideas from that. Because at some point, the stuff becomes just way too difficult for you to get an original idea entirely on your own. I will discuss with my coworkers, with the trainees. So, like, for example, if we have a student doing their thesis, master students, there will be a lot of talking about what we studied, talking about what to do in practice, and teaching, a ton of teaching. I love teaching. And then there will be a lot of practical work, in my case, fabrication and measurements. For someone who does a theory, this practical work means programming. So it means hitting their head on a computer all day long, trying to figure out how to solve something. And they will do that in small steps. Like I said, they're not going to get a genius idea out of nowhere. They are going to study and work. There is a lot of sweat. Yes?
So even though you're studying, you can also teach other people?
Yes. Well, now I am sort of done studying, but what I mean by study is that I continue on my own to read and learn. I don't get grades anymore. Finally. Nobody's going to grade my work. But if I don't study, then I don't get any better at my job. And that means stagnation, and that's not good. One can also be a physicist without doing research. And in that case, you will learn a series of things, and then you will get to apply those things and get up to date with the current trends and current state of the art, but maybe you don't need to do that much studying anymore. But yes, in university also, you may get that if you have good grades, after a couple of years, you become the assistant of some prof. So you will at least teach younger students how to do their exercises, and you are going to grade them, and you can supervise exams and so on. Yes?
How many years do you need to study when you have access to be a part as a member in a research group and be in your guidance?
That is super dependent on your country, actually, because every university has a different philosophy. So, for example, in Aalto, you study 1 year, and then in the summer you can already apply to be a research assistant in a group, and you will participate in the research. They might not hire you because you are only first year, and if they hire you someone second, third, or fourth year, they know that they know more stuff. But you can apply, and if you're lucky, you can get the job. So you can kind of start doing research almost immediately. And this is something that I would highly encourage, because practical experience of research, even if it's not in the field that you really want to work in, it's wonderful, because it will, well, we are going to see this a bit later, but it will make you face with like real actual problems that the solution is nowhere to be found. And then when you go back to study on books, and you know that the solution at least exists, it's going to feel much easier. Then I need to analyze data for my practical work, because otherwise I don't have any conclusions, and then I will have to do a lot of writing. So those who want to be a researcher because they hate writing, I have really bad news. Like, writing and communicating is how your job gets evaluated by the community. So like, if you hate writing, but you still want to be a physicist, you gotta learn to like writing. That's just it. And for example, we have writing courses in the university specifically for scientific writing, because it needs to be very precise. And this is not what I do in a single day. Like, I'm gonna spend maybe, I don't know, 1 week doing these two things, 1 day on this. I don't wanna talk about how long this takes, like let's say 2 months. And then do this in a couple of weeks, and then do this in 1 or 2 months. And that produces like 1 paper. And usually we manage to make like 1 paper per year, because if this doesn't work, the analysis or the practical, I gotta probably start over. So this whole chain needs 1 year to be successful. So imagine that you have 1 assignment for homework that you gave yourself, so you're not even sure of how good that is, and you're doing that for an entire year. If it works, you make a paper. And if you make 4 of those, you get a doctorate, basically. That's it. And I forgot to put teaching into this, because it will also take a lot of your time. Fixing stuff will take time, and also sometimes you might want to sleep, rest, and have hobbies, because mental health is kind of crucial to make everything else work.
You said that when you choose the topic, you don't be quite sure if it's the good approach or not for the problem.
Yes.
So isn't that quite stressful for
Yes.
you allocate your time plans for the future?
Yes, it is stressful, because it's like, well, when you are in school, you trust your teacher to choose the best assignment for your learning. When you have to give something yourself, you have no idea of how good that is. So it's quite stressful, but when you start doing it, the stress kind of goes away, because as you do it, you learn more about it, and you can rectify your direction. And maybe you're like, okay, I chose like a terrible topic, but then while studying for it, I realized that this is better, and you move into that. And the first times that you do that, you feel like a failure, and you're feeling like, okay, I'm not suited for this job. But actually that is exactly the nature of the job, trial and error. So it's very important to, at some point, become comfortable with your own errors, because they are inevitable, they are how you learn, and sometimes they may be like pretty big errors, and when you don't make them, then you gain a lot of confidence, and you're like, okay, I could have totally messed this up, and somehow I didn't. So it is quite stressful as a job. Yes.
How often do you like realize partway through the process that, oh wait, this idea is wrong and bad, and then you have to start over again? Like,
I don't know, 50% of the time.
And where does that usually happen? Like how far?
Usually it may happen like between this and this. So like when you discuss with your coworkers, you may find that they have already tried and it doesn't work. So you're like, okay, awesome, you saved me so much time. Or you realize that it's not feasible. Maybe you want to fabricate a material and you just don't have the tools. Or, but yeah, I would say that like I have to start over like maybe 50% of the time, and I'm very experienced at this. So like at the beginning, I would fail. Well, at the beginning, I would fail already in this stage, in the study stage, because I would start studying something and then I would tell myself, oh, this is never going to work. I'm not good enough to do this. Oh, no, this is probably, I'm sure that this cannot work. And that is a moment when you learn a lot about yourself, because you may be an optimist who is like, oh yeah, this is totally gonna work, and then it doesn't. Or you can be a pessimist who thinks that nothing is going to work and therefore never does anything. What happens usually is that you are a perfectionist and you study like 3 years or something before even trying to do it. That also is a trap in which one might fall.
What percentage of your work is spent on doing something you are passionate about, and what percentage is something that you need to do, that you are forced to do?
Oh, that's a tricky question, because for me, 100% is what I'm passionate about. I love all these things very much. Even when I have a terrible day that nothing works and everything is broken, usually I go home happy because I like the day-to-day of my work. I like to learn, and I get excited when I find a new idea, or even when I find a new paper that explains something I didn't get. I love the practical work. I like talking to people, and the thing I like less is analyzing the data. That's boring.
So you'd say you learn something like daily?
Yes. And sometimes I might just learn something that is about myself. Sometimes I might just learn that, oh, I overworked myself and today nothing works because I'm too tired. Those are important things. Every now and then I check for questions. You guys are a lot of people, so I have to. And all these things require skills, but not skills that you are meant to have before. They are in constant development with the things that you do, and they come from your personal development, because the skills that you need for these are soft skills. I mean, learning how to do the technical work is important, but nothing beats your own ability to summarize something, or your perseverance into making something work even when things are against you, and your knowledge, your wisdom to realize, oh, this is a good moment to fail because it's not going to work, and that's okay. So there is a lot of resilience, a lot of being kind to yourself while you study when you do this, because, I mean, physics is the kind of job that if you are a genius, it's easy. But like most likely none of us is a genius, so it's not easy. And you have to allow yourself that you are trying to make a job that would be easy only for a genius. Like this stuff wasn't easy for Albert Einstein, definitely. So I think that the best skills for becoming a good physicist are the same skills that you would get to be like a good human being in any task and any job, being able to do things with precision. And you need a lot of ethics, as in you need a lot of intellectual honesty. Something that happens a lot of times is that you get a really good idea, you discuss it with your coworkers tells you that that idea is a complete failure, and you have to decide who's right. And that's a completely human problem. It's not a physics problem. So you need to like sit down with the coworker and actually realize with facts which one of you is correct and which is not. And if you get irritated at being wrong, that's just a waste of energy and time. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm wrong, that's fine. I'm wrong all the bloody time. And I used to be the kind of person who would hate to be wrong, but physics taught me to like constantly be wrong. Yes?
Cultural differences, how honestly you can discuss the physical problem. So is there difference if you discuss with physicists in Finland or?
Yeah. Yes, so there is a lot of cultural differences. So, for example, there are several countries in which age and hierarchy matter a lot. So, for example, in Italy, where I'm from, there is a certain level of professor after which I can't just tell them that they're wrong. I need to like be diplomatic about it, etc. Or I need to just maybe wait for them to realize it on their own. A lot of countries have this hierarchy very, very deeply. For example, I have had some students from India and from China, and I would explain something, and I'm like, did you understand? And they're like, yes, I understood. Then they do the thing, and they didn't understand. But for them, it would have been a huge disrespect to me to tell me that they didn't understand, because it's implying that I'm a bad teacher. So I have to sit down with them and convince them that I'm not offended if they tell me that I did not explain it well. And that's how we solve it with communication. In Finland, I noticed that I cannot give a very bad feedback to people, to students. For example, in Italy, I'm used that if you don't say anything to a student, they did a good job. So the only thing that you will tell them is what they did wrong, and they learn to take it. In Finland, the first time that I like told a student everything that they did wrong, they were like looking at me half destroyed. And they even reported me to the university as an aggressive assistant. And I was like, yeah, but okay. So something that they teach us in university is to give this feedback sandwich. Something good, which is the bread, something bad, which is the filling, and then something good again. So when I want to tell someone that they're wrong here, I will find a way to sugarcoat it a bit. So yeah, a lot of cultural differences, and maybe more in Italy than in Finland, a lot of gender differences. Like women will say that they are sorry before telling you that you are wrong. Men will not. So there is a lot of like dialogue that in Italy is done, where girls already need to start with a sort of in a very prudent manner before they tell a man that they are wrong, especially if it's to a higher degree. And in Finland here, I found that much less. Everybody says they're sorry, but at least everybody's the same. So, what are the pros and the cons of doing physics? That's Mr. Max Planck, before and after he studied physics. But he invented many good things, though, so we forgive him. So the pros is that physics, science in general, is exciting. Everything that you study is new. And it's like, I go home and I'm like, oh, today I shot electrons at the speed of light into something and I saw atoms. Like, who does that? So that's a good thought. You get to work with a lot of cool toys. They can be computers or they can be experimental stuff. You get to make contact with a lot of international people. You get to travel. And you can find that your job is meaningful, like you are finding solutions to the secrets of the universe. That's meaningful. You can go home thinking that you did something for the world, even though what you did today was just get everything wrong and probably burn a sample. You get to share what you know. For me personally, that's super important. Like, I don't want to work in industry, because in industry you need to sign non-disclosure agreements and you get to keep some company secrets because you don't want other companies to steal them. And I don't like that personally, because I want to divulgate and tell everybody about the science that I'm doing. And you tend to work with pretty great people, because all those human qualities that you need to develop, like the ability to be wrong, the perseverance, the passion, all of your coworkers will have them and you get to work with them. What are the cons? you spend all of your time being wrong, feeling wrong, but you will learn at some point the difference between feeling wrong and actually being wrong. Like, I was wrong on something, that's great, that doesn't make me a failed human being. You will have a lot of stuff that doesn't work, that is incomplete, and you're going to obsess over it, and you're going to not sleep because something is not working. So it's important to like learn how to do that. You might burn out because you work yourself to the bone, and then your brain doesn't have the capacity anymore to like help you do a good job or just help you fall asleep and stay calm. Less known problems are excessive rationalization, meaning that all of those things that I talked about, like human qualities, people do them, but they usually don't think about them because we do an extremely rational job. So we are always thinking in terms of facts and math and things that just need to click. So people may absolutely forget that there is a human component to this job, or that you just work with people. Like, for example, what I said about discussing people and having to tell them they're wrong. Like, no matter how wrong they might be in something scientific, you cannot be unkind to them because that's just too much. And then I might say that people are like crazy, like Max Planck over there, but like I would put that into commas. They're not crazy, but I mean, when you get people who spend all their times obsessing over something that doesn't work, they are bound to sometimes develop some like problem. And then you may have people that then will obsess over the fact that today there is mashed potatoes instead of another kind of potato in the cafeteria. And those you may think that they are a little bit crazy. But in my opinion, the pros outweigh the cons a lot. And it depends a lot in how you take it. Okay, so next slide, I'm going to discuss like how you become a physicist in time. So before that one, anybody has some questions? No? Okay. Yes.
I like it when you said something about this scientific writing, because nowadays this magical examination is all about scientific writing. You need to write out the facts and do reasoning and arguments.
Yes. Well,
it's a very analytic way of.
Yeah. Well, it's good. Definitely good exercise. Well, I can give one piece of advice for this so that it's only one point and people can remember. The secret to good scientific writing is intellectual honesty. Because you are going to write something, and for example, you might write something that you didn't understand completely, but you remember that that's kind of how it's supposed to sound, and you will write it in a way that you think that the one who reads will think that you understand, but you didn't really understand. And you know that you didn't really understand. And you might think that you wrote it well, but probably you do not. So you need to write and then reread as if you were someone who does not know anything about that.
That's also my advice. When you are writing exam essay, read it with the eyes of somebody who hasn't get to know that topic yet. So you kind of teach in the way what
yes.
concepts are related.
Yes. For example, I can have an example. I don't see any pen. Ah, that one. Thank you. Okay. So for example, let's say that I'm writing some kind of essay, and then I am trying to like convey something about optics, and I will write this sentence, like, I don't know. Okay, so I wrote, the light conducts the electrons to blah, 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 something. Does that make sense?
No.
You're the teacher.
No.
You know what makes and doesn't make sense. So, like, what doesn't click with this? Like, what am I saying wrong?
The light conducts electrons very vague.
Yes.
Yes, I mean that could mean many different things. I mean, without any context, and also.
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't know what it's about.
Yeah. Well, if you know what this is about, you might get it. So, for example, let's suppose that I'm trying to describe a solar panel, and I want to put in evidence the fact that this solar panel is made of a semiconductor that already has the charges. So what I want to say is that the light is allowing the electrons to be free and therefore be conducted by an electrical field. So basically, I am skipping a part of this because in my head it's very clear. I think that it's very clear in the head of the teacher. Of course, they taught me that. But if you really read this without knowing the context, then you realize that light doesn't conduct anywhere. Light is not negative or positive, so it cannot pull an electron anywhere. You are misusing the word conductivity in this because conductivity in physics is not to conduct something, is not, I don't know, conducting, driving a car or these kind of things. It's something different. So it's a word with a very specific meaning, so you should not misuse it or abuse it into other sentences.
So for you as a scientist, the conduct is kind of label containing many levels of understanding.
Yes. It's like, for example, if I'm writing an essay about math, I will never describe anything as complex unless I'm talking about actual complex numbers. So I will say that a problem is complicated. I will say that it's challenging. I will never say that it's complex because in that context, it has a very specific meaning and I can't risk a misunderstanding when someone learns it. And especially one thing is that when you write something, you should try to write it with a logical sequence without introducing things that you did not define out of nowhere or that maybe the question did not define. So like it has to make sense, it has to have a flow, and it has to be something that can be read without someone interrupting and having to go back because it wasn't like totally clear. So it needs to be clear and precise and sequential in order to work. So, if you have time to reread your essay, because that's another mistake, like doing things last minute at 4 a.m. and then you don't have time to reread them. And if you can reread it, check that every word is actually making the sense that they are supposed to be making. It's, well, I don't know how literature studies work in Finland very much, but I suppose that in literature, you always end up at some point like dissecting the meaning of this poem to see if the poet was angry or sad when he wrote this. It's kind of the same thing, but with clean facts and very precise concepts. So, yeah. Oh, and practice writing. I mean, everything benefits from practice. So how does a physicist, a person that is a physicist, can evolve? So this is my timeline. Allow me to highlight immediately that in here I write how many years are necessary and in parentheses how many took me to finish. So 3 years of bachelor took me 4 years. 2 years of master's took me 5 years. I'll explain why. And 4 years of doctorate took me 5 years to be completed. And that's fine. It's not wasted time. It's time where you learn extra things. But it's if you ever think like you do your first exam and you fail and you're like, oh no, I'm gonna be so behind. That's fine. You can be behind and then you can still like be an accomplished scientist when you finish. So I did my high school in Italy, in this lyceum, which was based entirely on literature. There was very little science and math in it, a lot of literature, history, philosophy. It was a high school where mostly I studied Latin and ancient Greek. How does studying Latin help physics? Oh, with this stuff, definitely. And it makes you incredibly logical and precise, because translating Latin is like solving a puzzle, and math is kind of the same stuff. So in high school, I was an incredibly competitive student, and one of the reasons I wanted to study physics was not only to solve mysteries of the universe, etc., but also to feel smart. I thought, oh, I'm intelligent, I should study what smart people do. Then I go to university and like fall into complete desperation, because that stuff was way beyond my abilities. I adapted, I studied, I made an effort, and mostly I learned that like failing an exam does not mean that you fail as a human being. It's okay, it's a chance to learn. It can happen to anybody to fail, especially early, because you need to adapt. When you start university, it will be a completely different way of studying and of understanding things. So there will be a lot of adaptation necessary for this. At the end of the bachelor, which I did also in Italy, I chose a master. And I changed university. I will explain later why. And in changing the university, I changed a lot of my mindset. Basically, I did my bachelor in a highly competitive university where, for example, people wouldn't even study together. And it was a very sexist place where like I heard things like boys become theoretical physicists and girls become experimental physicists. Okay, I'm an experimental physicist, but that's not the reason why. And like in that university, it was true, because then no male professor would want to take a female student for the thesis, because they all had this mindset. So, I mean, not all the people in there were like that, but that was the general atmosphere. And especially first year of bachelor, nobody studied with others. Like there were no study groups of people working together. Everybody was on their own. And of course, that did not help anybody learn. Then I went to my master in another city, still in Italy. And during that, I had this great experience. I did an internship in New York City. And it was the first real research experience, and also the first time that I was paid for something. Because getting paid, it's actually very good. Not only because you get the money, but because you get to experiment having some worth, that your job is actually worth something, and that you are able to like pay for your life doing this. And during the master, I also did my master thesis. I got a lot of progress into like teamwork and being a good team player with the other students. Then I did another internship, still in Italy, and then I moved here to Finland for the doctorate. During the doctorate, I also spent some time in Germany. And in the doctorate, of course, like every change that you see here requires a change of mindset, requires trying a new environment. Basically, not only physics, but life in general, means that you learn to do a lot of things, and then the situation changes and you need to start over and learning a lot of things. In physics, much more than in life. And now I'm still here, and I have no idea what the next step is. I mean, I know it's going to be academic research, but I don't know in which country yet. I am trying different things. Let's see what works. But basically, this requires a lot of like starting at someone and then undergoing some kind of crisis, adapting, changing your mindset, understanding new things, and over and over and over again. Like, for example, you guys are all in high school and you came from middle school, so I suppose that you saw changes in the way you needed to study. Also, is someone maybe an exchange student or a foreigner? Everybody studied Finland all their life? Ooh.
I'm a foreigner. I've been here for 6 years.
Oh, where are you from before?
Greece.
Greece, nice. And so I guess you experienced some changes. So for example, in a scholastic point of view, has any of you at some point experienced some breaking point that radically changed your attitude towards studying and learning?
A couple. One in like 9th grade when I was kind of just lacking off in high school when I started becoming more and more interested in specific fields, especially math and chemistry and physics.
But was it traumatic? No. No, that's good.
I guess I could bring up the moving from Greece to Finland, because I did have time to do 7th grade in Greece, and then I redid it here in Finland. So it was extremely different, because in Greece it was just you alone studying with a lot of homework, a lot of theory, and then just doing tests. While here in Finland it was a lot more group activities and learning together, a lot less homework, just more relaxed.
Yeah, I noticed a similar with respect to Italy. Lots of homework, lots of individual work, and here there is a lot of group work. Okay, I'll continue. So basically, this is my small tour of the north of the world. So I started in Italy, then went to US, back to Italy, Finland, Germany, Finland again. Next time could be England, France, or Spain, because that's where I'm applying to work. And in all these different places, I was able to make a lot of different observations among the various places that I have been into. I will go through this kind of fast because I'm eating away more time than I thought. So basically, these cities, Pavia and Pisa, are the two Italian cities where I studied. Pavia is in the north of Italy, and Pisa is in central Italy. And if you look at the years of the foundation of the universities, is 1361 and 1343. So a lot of time ago. But they are very different for being the two of the oldest universities of Italy. I think the oldest is Bologna, 1143, I think. And Pavia is an incredibly classic city in terms of the methods of teaching. The teacher teaches, the student learns, and that's it. The teacher will have a blackboard, the student will make notes. Any other way of learning is considered not effective, not conducive to good things. And it's the place that I found very divisive, where people were not encouraged to cooperate, where there was a lot of sexism and a lot of ageism, as in, you're too young to have an opinion, just obey what you need to study. And that's not great for scientists, because that completely stunts your creativity, like the fact that you need to learn and the fact that you need to be wrong. In that place, you were not allowed to be wrong. You would be completely ridiculed and everything. Instead, Pisa, despite being the same age, had an incredibly more interactive and dialogue-based mode of learning and teaching, more similar to Finland, encouraging group work and having the teacher talking to the students and asking them stuff if they had understood and these kind of things. And it's a place where you feel like a scholar and not like a student. What's the big difference? The student just studies, but the scholar is someone who's also learning for their own enjoyment and their own growth. If you find a study environment that makes you feel that way, that is a good environment. That is the kind of environment that you need to hold as an example and try to recreate for yourself everywhere you go, even if you don't find it. And in New York and in Helsinki, so outside of Italy, the big thing that I experienced was independence. Italy was based a lot more on the teacher, the professor, the head of laboratory giving you assignments and you sort of doing them. You didn't have a lot of creative control over your science, which meant that you didn't have a lot of room for mistakes or for failing in that learning process that I showed before, where things are that you need at some point to fail some steps so that you can start over. The later you fail, the worse it is. And this especially in Finland. In Finland, I found that there is almost complete equality and that there is a lot of space for independent research, and it's very much based on practice. Like the first time that I was in this school, I saw like the laboratories, the microscopes, and I was like, my school had nothing like that. But you need practical stuff to learn. You also need theory, but you need practice as well. So one needs to try to get the best of both worlds. And something that I would be curious to ask you all is if these things that I said about Southern Europe and the US and Finland, I put here some extra things. Do these align with what you think it would be? So like, what do you think of Finnish education? Like the things that I just said about it, like, do they align with what you think about your own country? Or does the fact that like Italy and Greece have a learning based on like you being alone, does it work with what you think about Italy and Greece? For example, we can look at this one, being a foreigner in Finland. So lots of things are easy. The laws, the paperwork, the rules are actually followed and they are logical and predictable. On the other hand, social interaction is kind of difficult, and I personally found that importing my own work culture from Italy was not taken well by the rest of my team made of Finnish researchers. So for example, the difficulty in social interactions, knowing what you know about your own country, do you think that it makes a sense or that it's all in my head? Good. How do you think you would feel in a foreign country if you went to work there?
Well, I mean, like, I've lived in China for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and when I came, I really enjoyed it there. When I came back, it was complete, like, I was shocked. It was, well, even though I'd only been gone for 2 years, yeah, I agree with that.
So did you get reverse culture shock?
Sort of, yeah, but it was just that the whole, the working culture or studying culture is different.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We once had an exchange student from South Korea, and it was typical that he could calculate very rapidly math equations and do very good job, very quick job in that. And in the first, he was very happy to see this Finnish style of, as you said, taking relaxed and no homework and things. But after a while, he got stressed about it because he felt that for him the strictly doing things and calculating things were better.
And if I tell you, for example, that working in Italy is it's very competitive and people overwork themselves, would you have expected that? Someone from this side also. I will get to you, but nobody talks on this side. I will force them. For example, Italy is a place where working is driven by excellency and competition. Would that be something you expect?
Well, not really. I think like I was imagining like the Italian work culture was like laid back or something. I don't know. It's just a stereotype, but still. Overall, like the Finland stuff, it's really hard for me to think about if this makes sense, because I'm like experiencing it, but I hear a lot more of it than I'm creating like my like I'm experiencing it less than I hear about it. Like you hear like from the Finnish education system so much, but yeah, I don't really know. It's really hard for me to know if my feelings are true and how it actually is.
Yeah, it's that's one of the things, because when it's your country, it's like obvious to you. Like everything is exactly what you know, so it's difficult to see it from outside. For example, I experienced that in Italy. foreigners had a difficult time because like people were not quite able to see things from their point of view. Then I move to a new country, I become the foreigner, and I experience exactly the same things that they were experiencing. But yeah, in Italy, things are very competitive and people work a lot of hours and very hard because it's a country that focuses a lot on the concept of excellency. Like when you look at Italian products, it's always like luxury things and high fashion or like artisanal things made for thousands of years. So in Italy, there is a big focus on being excellent. And there is this idea that if you're not excellent at something, then you should not bother doing it. For example, when I finished high school, I was a very good student. But all of my professors told me to not go and do physics, go and study literature or languages or something else that you're really good at. Physics, you don't know if you're good at it, so you shouldn't bother doing it. And that leads people to like hyper focus on a topic because they're like, oh, this is my destiny, this is the thing I'm meant to do, and I'm meant to be excellent at it. So they have a lot of competition like with themselves and with this idea of high performance that is imposed by the culture. But then we are laid back in a lot of other things and very social. One good thing about Italy also for foreigners is that everything has a social aspect. You are at work, you will have dinner with your coworkers. You do a new sport, the team will take you with them going out and so on. So for example, being a foreigner allows you like a bit more socialization. Maybe not integration, but socialization, yes. You had a question before.
I would have thought that Italy and US have like switched in places that US would be the one that has like dedication and overwork and competition, and Italy would be the one that is has combination.
In the US, they work a lot, but they pretend to be relaxed. In Italy, they work a lot and they really enjoy looking stressed, like all the time. Like really, it's, for example, it's difficult to leave the work at the end of the day because you try to leave and no one else is leaving. So you stay there and maybe study and do a little bit more work, or sometimes you just go with them for a drink. So that's like that. One thing that I loved about Italy is the fact that there is a lot of interdisciplinary studies. Like in my high school, we studied like every subject would be intertwined with the other subjects. Like you couldn't study literature without studying the history and the philosophy of a period. And when we studied science, physics, it was always in a historical context. So we would always match like the development of the science with the development of the surrounding culture. Like the environment in which Galileo worked, which was like Renaissance Italy. The environment in which the noblemen of England, Lord Maxwell, and all those people were able to develop their own theories and why it was working for them. So that's something I really liked. Any other input on this? If not, I move to conclusions. Well, so in conclusions, physics is a difficult job, very rewarding. Best thing is to just enjoy the ride because it has a very bad ratio of how much you work versus how much you reap in terms of achievements. Like you are going to work 1 year on something and then it may be wrong. That's not like studying 1 week and getting a grade. It's much more delayed. The gratification is delayed and it's not a lot. So one learns to do physics for physics' sake. Like Feynman said, yes, physics has some practical applications, but that's not why we do it. And then when you learn the job, you learn skills that are useful not only to physics, but also in many other aspects of life. Like, how many people do you know that have no idea on how to be wrong on something? Like, how many people you know that get really upset when they just lose a discussion or lose a board game? Physics really kicks that out of you, because if you have to be upset every time that you're wrong, then you spend your life being upset, and that's not pleasant. So, all in all, I'm very glad that you listened to me ranting about physics for 1 hour. And if you have any last questions, I will be very happy to take them.
In physics or in research in general, how important is it to move between countries, or is it mandatory?
It depends on where do you want to land. So I would like to become a university professor. And for that, I need to get stamps on my passport and get collaborations. And sometimes you get universities that force you. Like, for example, I worked 5 years in Aalto. I can't work a 6th year unless I first go somewhere else. So it's highly encouraged. And it gets you, you learn how to collaborate with people from different parts of life.
Can I ask how many of you are dreaming or thinking studying abroad after high school? Have you?
Well, quite a few. Where would you like to go?
Scotland.
Sorry?
Scotland.
Scotland.
Yeah. Veterinary science.
Oh, nice. And do you think that you will all actually do it? Go abroad in, I suppose, 1 or 2 years? Dreaming of doing something is one thing, but then actually doing it, that's a different job.
When you were in high school, your teachers told you that you were good at literature and adequate at physics.
Yes.
Do you think that it has?
No, she told me I was rubbish at physics, but she was a very mean person.
Okay. Was the assessment correct? Were you not so very good at physics, or?
We were not given the instruments to be good because we did so little of it that, I mean, she was right in saying that I didn't know anything real about physics. But she couldn't say that I was bad because I never got challenged on it.
So when you went to the field of physics, do you think it has brought more to the world and to yourself than if you had went to study literature in a subject that you were really good at?
Well, I think so. I think that definitely for me it has brought a lot of a good critical mindset that allows me to look at things with honesty and evaluate them and for example be very good at fact checking, which is something good also for life. And it definitely made me mature a lot as a person, because if I had proceeded, like I said, in high school, I was convinced I was really, really smart. If I had moved on to do something that I was already good at, I would have only become more arrogant. But in physics, I learned a lot of humility, and I learned how to cope with not being able to do things. And I think that definitely helped me. I don't know about the world. I hope so.
I'm guessing that being passionate was a key ingredient in that.
Yes.
What other opportunities are there to be a physicist other than working at university?
Oh, plenty. So you can be a researcher in industry. So you can do research and development. For example, at Microsoft, they do a lot of work in optics, developing the Oculus and those VR things. That is a very sophisticated job that you can do if you have a good understanding of physics, for example. And you can teach, of course. So you can be a physics teacher. You can be a physics divulgator, so someone who explains science to the general public, make documentaries and these kind of things. You can be, let's say, a bureaucratic physicist. So the kind of person that, for example, works for the patent office. So you become really good at the legal systems that deal with science. That you can also do if you are a chemist, an engineer. All of those things you can do if you are any other kind of scientist. You can study also. You can be a researcher of things related to science, like history of science. That's also a thing. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Oh yes, financial consulting. They love a physicist because they know very good math. They know math, they work hard, and financial field will pay a lot of money for a good physicist. I sorry, I don't hear well.
How that we use renewable energies to combat climate change.
Mm.
What other fields of physics or like other energy-related fields do you think that could also combat in some other ways or same ways but with other tools?
Well, there is a lot of theoretical studies in the field. For example, an example, space observation that monitors climate change and a lot of like patterns in the air around the Earth, the status of the atmosphere and all these kind of things. That's a very theoretical job with a very practical application over climate change. You can have a lot of studies in terms of like antenna design and development of IT technology. And now the hot stuff is the quantum computers. So people are throwing qubits and quantum computing pretty much everywhere. For example, a good thing about physics is to learn when something is really quantum and when not. Because some computers are just simulating a quantum computer. And quantum computing is something that may like be a very unpredictable technology. Like it may help fields that we still don't even know exist. So like the quantum computer can definitely be something that, for example, I don't know, maybe something that eliminates Bitcoin mining. I don't know, something like that.
Sorry, you mentioned a job that's very theoretical, but that's very like application.
Yes.
Many, like, applications.
Yeah.
What was that job?
The one I mentioned is like the treatment of data worldwide that observed like climate change from the atmosphere from satellites.
So is it data science?
Yeah. Also, another type is the modeling of proteins and biomedical molecules. Like that's very theoretical, but that's how you design a new meds, how you understand, like, I don't know, how cancer cells come to be. So that's very theoretical yet applicative.
When you took the last year and software, did you think of any other fields of studies outside of your interest?
Oh yes, I thought also outside of physics. Like when I finished my high school, I was very passionate about languages and linguistics. I had gone to theater school, so I was thinking of going through that path. And then I actually studied physics because I wanted to study particle physics, like go to CERN. But then at some point during the way, I met lasers and I like sort of fell in love with optics. And I was like, okay, I want to do this instead. And I was still a bit undecided. So I asked a professor for advice. And he said, go and study condensed matter physics, because that can then be applied to so many different things that you still have time to like a field more. So, for example, with my studies, I could go into particle physics and work on detectors, for example. Yeah. Yes, it's you need to work really hard, but Italy is a nice place to live. The universities, like, I think it's good if you go to a city with a big university, because then there is a lot of student life and it will be good quality university. Like the stuff that you study will be like, and they have this habit of making you study a bit of everything. So for example, I studied matter physics, but I had exams on theoretical physics, astrophysics, particle physics, medical physics. We needed to know also what everyone else is doing. So that was very nice. And well, I don't need to tell you that the food is amazing and very cheap. When I buy a beer in Finland, I cry, but like in Italy, it's like 70 cents for excellent beer in the supermarket and 3 euros for very good beer in a pub. So, yeah. Okay, so the lecture is done.
Yes, we are running out of time, but can you tell us what is about to come in the following part?
Yes.
Physics 17 for my part. Yeah.
Okay.
Please tell us what.
Thank you.